Israel will attack Iran in the coming days. That is a headline that you may have read. You may have read it today. You may have read it yesterday. You may have read it in recent months or recent years, because I've seen it many, many times. It is a frequent thing. I think the first time I saw it must have been like 20 years ago. The Sunday Times in this country used to do that kind of on a regular basis. Every few months, the Sunday Times would say, here's when Israel is planning to strike. And of course, most of the last 20 years, the prime minister of Israel has been Benjamin Netanyahu, who anybody who has followed his career knows that he is not the kind of person who does things. He's the kind of person who talks about doing things, and then when he's actually in charge, blames everybody else for things not getting done. So it seemed like it seemed to me at least like it's unlikely to happen. But now it seems like it might. Yeah, it really the U.S. Apparently currently Trump is not as optimistic about the negotiation being pushed around by Iran for quite a few months. It seems like he's coming to an end point with that, and Israel spoke or talked about maybe going it alone. It might not have to happen now. So. Is time up for Iran finally? Is Israel about to strike? We don't know, but we will talk about it. Welcome to the reality show. I'm joined by Jonathan Honig and Eyal Reichel. Eyal, I'm going to go to you first. You are, from your internet connection, maybe already in a bomb shelter waiting for this, but let's hope we hear what you have to say.
Can you hear me well?
At that point, well enough, yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, I think we might attack and we might not. And if to be a little bit more serious, I think the Israeli government and some of our bureaucrats, like the main trend within the administration here is that they're pretty eager to attack Iran, uh, and they want to get a green light from Trump. Now, I don't know what has been happening behind the scene, whether it's like a facade or like what's coming out in the news is real. So it's either like Trump gave Israel a green light to do it in a certain time, or I think even the more likely situation is that Trump is trying to show Iran he means business and that his threat of attacking them if they wouldn't budge in the so-called deal. So he's trying. I think he might be trying to show Iran that he's like ready to attack or ready to allow Israel to attack if they wouldn't go down with their demands. Now, I've seen a title that says that like there has been a new ultimatum, like if Iran wouldn't change their mind and like go for a deal, like a good deal, so-called, until Sunday, then Israel will have a green light. I'll see almost all sort of like this kind of news. So it could have been like a negotiation tactic, like showing we have the rod here, and it could have been like, for real, really, really have a green light. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that make me semi-hopeful, Jonathan, is the fact that the U.S. has ordered staff in its embassies around the Middle East to leave. It looks like the U.S. is preparing for something to happen. Trump, in his normal style, he's talking about the U.S. military and how it's going to do something very impressive. Now, it could be that something very impressive is go and fight, rioters in LA, but it could also be that they're actually gonna do something that America really needed to do in 1979, and that is recognize the threat that is the Islamic regime in Iran and take care of it, even though what we're talking about is not even that. We're talking about striking their nuclear weapons program and not even eliminating it. But I do think that will probably result in all-out war, which will have to end in regime change.
Well, Razi, I mean, they're promising to continue with their enrichment. This is an article from the Wall Street Journal today. Iran says it will open secret new enrichment site after UN Atomic Agency censure. So, they're serious about that. And, let's keep in mind this isn't like a disagreement between Israel and the UK, or the UK and the US, or Canada and the US. Iran is the world's preeminent state sponsor of Islamic terrorism worldwide, and has been for decades. So, every time we've tried to placate Iran, every time we try to have a deal with Iran, they've wanted more and more and more, and now are getting to the point of actually being able to enrich uranium, consequent with having a nuclear weapon. And if and when that happens, that really does change anything, because I think, unlike Vladimir Putin, I do think, my sense, this is certainly not objectivism, but my sense is that the Iranians, the mullahs, actually would use those weapons in a conflict. So, my hope is, Dr. Binswanger has that wonderful line, Dr. Harry Binswanger, that the threat of force is force. And the Iranians have been threatening the US, Israel, and the West for decades now. And that is force that I think should be responded with strongly.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Russia, I don't fully trust Putin to never use them. But that's the thing, with countries that already have nuclear weapons. Yeah, you are kind of less able to defend yourself against what they do. And Iran already attacks countries and has been doing so since 1979, or shortly thereafter. Well, they started by attacking their own country, and continued to attack neighbors, in some cases dictatorships, in some cases directly, in some cases indirectly. But this is what they do, and this is what dictatorships need to do. Now, as far as America is concerned, so Vered says in the chat, Tulsi Gabbard posted a video about how terrible nuclear war is, without any context and without mentioning Iran. It was bizarre. And yeah, I'm worried about kind of Trump, isn't fully isn't a principled person, and he is often swayed by the last person he spoke to, and hopefully, right before a decision is made, the last person he speaks to isn't Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what worries me. That's what worries me a little bit. I remember President Trump's comments when he was in the Middle East a couple of weeks ago, basically, in my opinion, having a moral equivalency between Western philosophy and Middle Eastern philosophies, ex-Israel, saying, hey, you've got your ways, we've got ours. So I'm a little worried about that, Razi, that he will agree to a deal. But there's no question he's worried about an Iranian response. Iran has promised that it will strike U.S. and Israeli targets if there's any preemptive strike on its nuclear attacks. And this is from Axios. U.S. fears Iran's response to Israeli strike would be a mass casualty event. They've got thousands of rockets that could be launched to U.S. bases within their distance, and of course Israel as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably likely.
Yeah, I have a point on that.
Yeah.
So they have, according to estimates, they have thousands of long-range missiles, yet they have a limited number of launchers. I think a few hundreds. Now that is very important, because at least in Israel we have systems that are sort of capable to deal with such amount for each time. So let's say they use all of their launchers, will have some damage, but it's not it's likely will not lead to a catastrophe. Now, regarding the US forces in the Middle East, I don't know, but I think this is absurd. This is completely ridiculous that the United States is worried about defending itself from aggressors, because the aggressor might fight back. Well, that's the point of defending yourself. You need to fight to prevent that. So you cannot say, oh, I will not go to war because war is difficult, so I'll just wait for evil to attack me when I'm not ready, which unfortunately, this is a mistake Israel already did. The right thing to do is to stop them, and we should have done it in 1979. And I also have a little anecdote. Khomeini is the father of the Iranian revolution, the Ayatollah regime. And he was such a radical Islamist that he was exiled from Iran. And who gave him sanctuary? It was France. And who gave him audience and allowed him to speak up and let people hear him? It was the BBC. So the West has been giving moral sanction to crazy Islamist ideas decades ago, half a century ago, or even further in the past. And when he made it, by the way, another anecdote, he made the revolution. Who helped him? The communists in Iran. There was many communists, they're young students supporting communism. And after he went to power, he killed all the communists in power and took over and like purged the communists who helped him into power. So to all those people say whenever there is a communist revolution and then the communists purge the communists, sometimes it's the other side who purge them as well. But they'll be purging. Just an anecdote. And then they kidnapped like tens of American citizens in 79, and in return, they got like legitimized. So there was a deal. They made a deal with the United States. They got legitimized by the state. They got promised not to be attacked. And then they've been trying to spread the revolution ever since, funding the Houthis, funding the Palestinians, funding Hezbollah, militias in Iraq, and they've attacked Israel directly with two missile attacks in the past year or two. So people in the States are engaging in complete evasion. What I'm saying here is undeniable fact. The Iranians are not denying that, or like at this time, they deny some of the proxy wars, but they cannot deny the attack they've made. They've made statements about it. They went to the UN about it, saying that it's supposedly legit. Like, this is a fact that nobody's denying, yet it's being ignored. And people saying, "Oh, you gotta make a deal with Iran, and you just want to have like a civil nuclear plan or whatever." This is like, what the fuck are you talking about? So, pardon my French. What are you talking about? It's like, and people are like citing Iran, and I don't even want to mention what Obama did. Obama worshipped Iran. That's crazy.
Both you gentlemen, mentioned the hostage taking in the U.S. Embassy in 79. And Razi, I love Miss Rand's response when Phil Donahue asked her about it, because it's played out so beautifully. I say that very darkly, and it hasn't been beautiful, but she was so spot on. I mean, this is my recollection of, she basically said, Miss Rand said that if we didn't go in there within the first 48 hours to get those hostages out, we were going to be paying for it for decades. And here we are now, 40 years plus later, and they're on the verge not only just of having legitimacy, Yar, to your point, but to actually having a nuclear weapon that could have a massive, talk about a mass casualty event that, that could kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. So Rand saw it. She saw it coming. She said, if you did not strike them hard, get them back right away, make a point, take a stance, you're going to be paying for it for decades. And we are.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat says, classic interview, that 1980 Donahue one. Absolutely. We read that one part of it often on the show, but the whole thing is great. Make sure you watch it. You mentioned the communists helping the revolution in Iran, and I've mentioned this on the show. I once saw the beginning of a documentary. I wasn't interested enough to watch the rest of it about the revolution, and at the beginning of it, there's somebody who managed to escape who says, "Yeah, I was, one of these communists. We were fighting to overthrow the Shah." And we couldn't believe how much worse it was later. And yeah, this is why it's important for these people, their current iteration in the West, not to teach history. Because if you know history and you know how the patterns that you're following, where they lead to, you are much less likely to jump on board these ideas. Again, how many of the people, the rioters in Colombia fully understand that what they are advocating for is the kind of tyranny in which they would be among the first to go, and in the most brutal way? I don't know, but it's definitely on them to find out. But it is those intellectual leaders who make sure that they don't find out until it's too late. You also mentioned, I don't remember in which context, because I wrote down partial notes, but something about the approach of Europe, and it was interesting. Yesterday, we talked about it on the reality show that Norway, on the same day that it is signed to this joint declaration by several countries, that they are sanctioning two ministers in Israel's government, the democratically elected government of Israel. Uh, uh, on the same day, they hosted the Iranian foreign minister in the Oslo Forum in Norway. So and yeah, gave him a warm reception. So that is Europe's position, which is why we are at the point where we hope that Trump accidentally lands in the right place, because that is the best we can hope for at this moment.
A country that doesn't respect its own citizens' rights, which Iran does not, is not going to respect the rights of citizens around it, which Iran does not. I mean, they are responsible, as we've talked about, for funding I would say, from my understanding, a majority of the terrorism around the world for decades now. And that makes them an illegitimate state. And if anyone who would have the chutzpah to go in and take out their completely destroy their nuclear ambitions, for example, I think could demonstrate truly how weak they are, and perhaps foment some type of an actual civilian uprising that would lead to regime change. We're always told that Iranian people are really truly Western, and they don't like the mullahs, and they don't like the Islamic rule. I mean, if the West could demonstrate the futility of following that militant Islamism, then perhaps you could see a real change for the good.
Yeah.
Well, I think let's talk for a moment. Let's state the obvious. Let's talk about the should and capable. So the Western world should, and by should I mean has an interest and a moral right, and I should even say a moral obligation, to take down.
We're still live.
Okay, to take down the Iranian regime, and sooner the better. That's like the should. Now, what the Western world is capable, and I talk about morally capable, is at most like take down their nuclear capabilities, maybe a little bit of hurting the economy a little bit, but that's pretty much it. Like, unfortunately, this is what the Western people are able to support and allow. And this is for itself an indication of a moral degradation, a complete decline. So this is just my point in this regard.
Okay, I have a point about that, but thank you, Apollo Zeus, for the super chat. Yeah, so my thinking about this is that the Iranian response will be very serious. I mean, this will end up being all-out war likely, in which case you don't really have a choice as Israel and as the US. You have to fight fire with fire fully, and not in part. I also, yeah, I am wondering to what extent Israel has a network in Iran, because we know it's to a great extent, but is it to the extent that we might actually see thousands of armed people, in strategic places fighting against? This is all speculation, but unlike October 7th, this is something Israel has been preparing. This scenario is something Israel has been preparing for forever. And I'm also, I'm thinking about this recent thing that was reported in Israel, that basically Israel's SDI, the laser, Star Wars, that Ronald Reagan was ridiculed for suggesting that Israel has basically come up with, and that has shot down many, many rockets and drones uh, over the past 20 months. To what extent is there more to that than we know? And yeah, how prepared is Israel? Is it much more prepared than it might seem to those of us outside? Does it intentionally downplay its ability to do what needs to be done here, or is it really going to do some sort of strike that kind of sets Iran back a year?
Well, I mean, I'll just say, when you talk about young men and women going into harm's way, young Israelis going into harm's way, it's very serious, and it's obviously extraordinarily dangerous. But you want to think about the long term potential here for Iran to achieve a nuclear weapon, and what would that mean to the region long term? I mean, that would be almost game over for any semblance of freedom or absence of a clear threat. So, I never want to be callous about saying, oh yeah, Israel should go in and do this, or go in, when there's young people who are actually could get hurt and could die. But the role of government is to keep you safe, is to protect you. And Iran, to Yar's point, is attacked Israel multiple times in just the last couple of years. I mean, this last missile attack was massive. This was just within the last 6 months. So what are they supposed to do? Just sit there and wait until they get attacked next time by a nuclear weapon? Not only moral, but certainly would be, necessary, I think, for Israel to be truly safe.
Yeah, regarding, two things. First of all, I want to talk about our capabilities to defend ourselves. So as I said, there is a limited number of launchers. So there is a limit for every single attack. They have to rearm them, etc., etc. It's not a very quick process. Also, their stock of missiles, it's getting the longer it goes, the missile becomes less effective and more likely to fail, and it's not so easy to create new ones at this time. So there will be missile failures even before we have to intercept them. Now, regarding the laser system we have, I'm talking according to open source news, so it's mostly effective against drones. Yet we still have systems against ballistic missiles. It's all, again, you can read it up in the internet. We have the Arrow 3 system, which is like intercontinental ballistic missile destroyer. And we have many other defense systems. And we have shelters. There'll be bomb alerts, we go into shelter. So yeah, they might do some damage, but there is a limit to the damage they can inflict on us. Once again, regarding the United States forces in the Middle East, I don't know. Now, I want to talk about another thing, which is I'm worried about Iran getting nuked, not because I think it is likely that they will nuke us. It's possible. They're crazy, irrational jihadist regime who is self-destructive and destructive for others. So they just might say, whatever, yeah, let's do it. But the phenomenon that frightens me, I call it tyranny, nuke, arrogance. Once a tyrannical regime gets a nuke, and the best example is North Korea, it becomes arrogant, it becomes unjustly brave. It becomes a regime that can do whatever he wants, gets aid from the Western world, and nobody does anything against him because they are convinced that the West wouldn't do anything about them because they have the threat of nuclear war. And it's extremely against my interest and every rational being interest to have another arrogant nuclear dictatorship. And it's baffling we got to this point. Like, we shouldn't have get to this point. We should have ended this way earlier. I'd like to remind you that evil is impotent, and most of the whatever capabilities evil he gets it from the sanction of the good. And it's just a shame we did it for so long and allowed this monster to grow and grow. Like, we growed it. We gave it sanction, we growed it, we created it, and we allowed it. And that's just a shame. And we're gonna see, we might see horrible consequences of that.
Yeah, and by the way, even if we do see an attack, we will see the sanction of the good in some way in the way the attack is done. Like we said, it's not going to be all out until Iran responds. And that's another thing. If it is a multi-casualty event, if they do hit buildings in Tel Aviv, if thousands die, Israel will respond differently than if Iran does the exact same thing, but those exact same missiles are shot down because that's how they do things. We here at the Ayn Rand Center UK do things differently, and we're gonna do it live in just under, is it 3 weeks? Yeah, 3 weeks. Yeah. With Jonathan Hoenig, among others, Michael Kaufman, Jim Brown, myself, The Daily Objective, and The Reality Show. live on stage in Boston, July 1st. It's a free event. There's a link in the description and in the chat. Make sure you sign up. Make sure you join us there. There's a lot more than just those two. It's a 3-4 hour event. I'm not even sure how long, but I will check it, tomorrow. But there is more than yeah, more to it than just those two shows. But just those two shows are a good enough reason to sign up and join. Jonathan, somebody in the chat said, if you want to bet on war, buy oil futures. I know you don't give investment advice on this show, but yeah, thoughts?
Well, I mean, who knows what would happen with the markets, with the economy? It's impossible to decipher. I mean, we've covered the Palestinian war against Israel over the last some years, Razi, and it's a human cost. It's something you can't even think about in financial terms. I mean, it's the cost of people's lives. Given up for a purposeless reason like Islamic totalitarianism, like Islamism. I don't, it's shocking and it's sad and it's pathetic that it still goes on to this day. But to your point, if Israel preemptively strikes Iran and Iran has a massive response to Israel and other Western targets, you'll see the market. I'm not going to make a prediction, but I could see the market dive 3 or 4 or 5,000 points. But speaking personally now, if that meant that Iran's chance of getting a nuclear weapon is off the table, I think that's good for 100,000 Dow points in terms of long-term safety and prosperity for the West.
Yeah. So somebody in the chat says it'll be an exciting day when an actual UK person features on this channel. I guess the fact that I've been living here for 17 years doesn't count because I don't know if it's a skin color or an accent thing, but yeah, we have other UK people. But yes, we have a worldwide audience and we do have a worldwide panel as well. Hazel says, I saw today that the Iranian people have asked for this attack. Is this true? And if so, they must be desperate. I wouldn't put it as the Iranian people, but many Iranians are absolutely wanting this to happen and have been very clear about this for a long time. I mean, they risk their life protesting. They risk their life celebrating when the Iranian president died in that helicopter accident, maybe accident, just to celebrate, just to, shoot fireworks and stuff. So absolutely, believe me, yes, when this happens, there will be people out in the streets celebrating. There will be people fighting against the regime. Yeah, it'll be, if done properly, this will be a very, very good day for the whole world and absolutely for any good person in Iran.
That's just the type of strike, and it's totally out of my area of expertise, but I think I would want to see something that tells the Iranian people you have no chance of winning, that we have such superiority over you militarily that if you fight, you die. And I think that's how you keep a war. That's how you keep a war short, not by a little proportional response. They send one rocket, you send one rocket, but let them know that their cause has no chance whatsoever, and then the war ends.
So I love that. And yeah, I don't want to take a positive that Jonathan just stated and turn it into a negative, but Israel should have said that to the people of Gaza, and it said the exact opposite. Now here, there is still this, okay, they're the underdog, they're weak, so you don't fully fight them approach that you're gonna see less of when it comes to war with Iran. But uh, yeah, do you trust Israel to actually make that statement of, look, this is it for this regime. It doesn't have to be it for the Iranian people. This could be the start of something beautiful. Will this be Israel's approach?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think Netanyahu have made such a statement for the Iranian people. And this is quite an interesting comparison between Gaza and Iran, because if you look at Gaza, like it's 100% Palestinianism, which means we go after the Palestinian ideology of completely annihilating the Jews in Israel and like it's a whole ideology based on destruction and nihilism and jihadism, or sometimes communism in some regards. Um, and when you look in Iran, so yeah, there is like a very huge amount of Islamist Shiites, people who support the regime, and there are many people who want to be free, who doesn't want a regime that tortures them and takes away their rights and liberties and forces them to be in this Islamic dystopia. And I think what's happening now is that the people who really want this regime to go are kind of sitting on the fence. And I can understand their interest because they don't know what's going to happen. The scenario of Iran becoming a, a nuclear arrogant tyranny is possible. And I think they think, well, why should I go now and try to fight against this regime if it might become nuclear any moment and then like nobody will help me? And this is the reason I think an Israeli attack on Iran, and even better, a combined attack with the States as well, can also lead to some sort of a cascade that would lead to the fall of the Iranian regime, even without us directly going into all-out war. Because once we take out their nuclear capabilities, and it will be clear to the people that they're not able to get nuke, I think it will give the people in Iran more power and more hope, perhaps, to actually try to take down the regime and succeed, because the regime would be on its knees without nuclear capability, with the Western world against it, whether they respond or not. And the people in Iran who wants the regime to go, and there are many people. I don't know if there are a majority. I don't think so, but there is a critical mass of people in Iran who are willing to do whatever it takes to take down this regime when they find a proper opportunity. And this might just be it. So I'm in this regard, I'm quite positive, and I think like Iran is weaker than it seems until it will achieve nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and yeah, like it's one of the things when you go to such a into such a war is you don't know. So there's a lot you don't know. I think what Israel knows about what's going on in Iran, which of course we on this channel don't know, but what Israel does know is probably a lot more than any country knows about what goes on in any other country. But still, I don't know if they know with great confidence if regime change is possible with the people kind of pushing it. If Iran ends up breaking up into multiple countries, we don't know, but we know something needs to be done. And this is kind of off topic, Jonathan, but it's I often get reprimanded by viewers for reading troll comments, but sometimes trolls tell us it's often something like Free Palestine and a PLO flag and something like that. Sometimes they tell us how they think in such a way that I think really needs to be pointed out, not because I think this troll has any hope, but because it gives the rest of us an understanding on how on what kind of thinking is out there. So somebody in the chat says crazy mind control though to make someone believe what is going on in Gaza is okay. This person earlier on says, I still don't get why you call it a war in Gaza. For people who don't understand that comment, there's the Twitter warriors like to say it's not a war, it's a genocide. Of course, they started a war. They don't want to end the war, even though they can at any point, but it's a genocide because that's what they decided to use. And by the way, if genocide and war are not mutually exclusive, if there was a genocide that happens as part of a war often. But yeah, to call it mind control, I mean, uh, it's called independent thinking, and you are actually not saying anything original. You are literally just repeating what you happen to see somebody on Twitter say, and to put it as what was it? To believe what is going on in Gaza is okay is not the kind of statement that a person who thinks things through says. Because you saw some headlines, you may have read even the body of the article, and you read it unquestioningly. You didn't ask any questions, and you don't ask questions. You're the kind of person who, when they're told it's time to kill the Jews to put it in gas chambers, you goose step to the beat of whoever's drum. When when you're told, okay, it's not the Jews, it's the Zionists, but it's actually Israel's community, you repeat that. You're not a person who changes anything, even if you're in these protests or in our chat. You're the kind of person who blindly follows, and for whom the leaders of the most evil movements in the world really they count on you. They count on you to be the cannon fodder that you are. Jonathan.
Well, I mean, what happened was the Palestinians, aka Hamas, started a war against Israel. And the same thing is true with Iran, with the most recent missile attack as the latest example, have started wars against Israel. So is Israel going to respond, or is it going to let itself just be subject to attack, at whim? My hope is that it responds. It responds very forcibly and sends a clear message to all of these foes that you know their success is impossible, and especially when it comes to Iran and a nuclear program. I think your point about North Korea now has a seat at the table in effect because they are a nuclear power, even though it's the most backward country you can imagine. They have and even our own President Trump, he shows him respect, the love letters. So Iran does not deserve that respect and should not have the weapon that would give it to them.
And let me quickly just say, PC says, Razi, why do they call it a genocide? Where is the evidence to back up their nonsense? So it depends who you mean by they. If you mean the person in the chat that I just referenced, uh, he calls it a genocide because he's heard other call it a genocide. He's heard it on television or on the internet, and where he read it in news sites or on news channels, they say, well, the experts say it's genocide. Now, who are the experts? It's people like Amnesty International and the government of Iran who have told, who have actually said, look, we need to change the definition of the word genocide to fit this in. So yeah, the reason this person is saying it, and the reason 99% of people who say Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza say it, is because somebody else said it, and the reason somebody else said it is because they are supporters of an actual genocidal movement, Palestinianism, which is clear and unapologetically genocidal. They're not successful enough. Their greatest success was October 7th, but they state in no uncertain terms what they want, and it's a hard sell for the West. It's an easier sell for the West, for people in the West to say, actually, the perpetrators are actually the victims. Yeah.
Well, I want to address the difference between war and genocide, and I think this difference lies in understanding free will. Humans has an amazing skill, a capacity to choose between alternatives. And this ability to make choices gives them the next causal step, which is responsibility. They are responsible for the choices. Now, when the Turkish regime, a little bit more than 100 years ago, was the Ottoman regime back then, slaughtered and genocided the Armenians, they didn't give them no choice. You are Armenian, you are doomed to die. That's it. No reason, no nothing. Like they picked the Armenians up and killed them. And this is the same with the Holocaust. Jews weren't given any choice. They were Jews. The Nazis claimed that it is in their blood. To be the enemy of humanity and trying to enslave humanity is just in their blood. They're evil. So they were not given any choice, but were led forcibly to the gas chambers or to the mass graves. When you look at the Gazans has launched a war against Israel and are given a choice. And the choice is simple. Go against Palestinianism, go against Hamas, go against whatever. Help your democratic neighbor to take down the tyrannical regime that holds you, and the suffering will stop, the killing will stop. But most people in the Gaza Strip, And when I say most is an understatement, a vast majority, and I have many evidence for that, are completely supportive of the Mukawama idea, the resistance, the jihadism, the attempt to destroy Israel at all costs. Now, they are divided. There are those who do that because they're communists and they want a communist utopia without Jews. There are some who do it because they're supporters of like PLO and want to do it with diplomacy. There are some who are in Islamic Jihad and Al Qaeda and whatever, and the majority there is Hamas, but it doesn't matter. Almost every person in Gaza is willing to destroy his whole life to kill Jews and destroy Israel. So once Israel gives them the choice, listen, you can surrender, you can give up the violence, you can give us back the hostages, like stop supporting a regime that's trying to kill all the Jews. The Palestinians are actively, and there is evidence for it, they actively choose not to do that. They say, no, we want to destroy Israel. We want to kill you all. We don't care how many will die in the process. There'll be shaheeds, there'll be martyrs. Let's go. That's so this is very important to understand. Israel is giving these people a choice, and this is a pretty rational choice, a pretty clear choice. Let's stop trying to destroy the Jews. It's not going to happen. We're not going to make it. Let's try to build life for ourselves and make something good in our life. But those people in Gaza are so evil, and they have made a choice to become as such that they have to bear the responsibility for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's, I don't know what more needs to be said. I mean, no element of what constitutes genocide is actually happening from the Israeli side. But like I said, everything except actually succeeding in it so far is what the Palestinian ideology is. It's not even a part of it, uh, because again, Palestinianism has different forms. You know, there are people who want theocracy. There are people who want communism, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. There are people who want fascism. They all want to get rid of all the Jews. Thank you, Mary, for the super chat. Thank you, Mary, also for yesterday's super chat, which came in at the end of the show, and we went off the air. And thank you, Joel, for the super chat. Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting, Razi, is all these different tribal areas of the Middle East. You know, Iran is its own tribal mysticism, Islamic mysticism, and Palestine and Gaza has its own. And like Israel, as we always try to emphasize, stands as this it's like the sole beacon of Western reason within this complete cesspool of, as you said, whether it's totalitarianism, whether it's communism, or just some type of tribalism. And miracle is a weird term to use for someone who's an atheist and doesn't believe in mysticism, but in a real sense, Israel really is a miracle. And I think it's one of the reasons I know I support it and support what we're doing here with the Ayn Rand Center UK in our defense of Israel in recent years, is because it is the sole defender of reason, technology, a rights respecting society in the entirety of the Middle East. And boy, if that could be formed in Iran, if that could be sparked in Iran, I mean, it could talk about a golden age. I mean, you could see Iran turn around like no country has ever turned around in history if you could get rid of the mullahs and get the right ideas in place.
Yeah, Hazel says, I've just heard on CBN that Hamas killed people on a bus delivering food aid into Gaza. Their own people, it said. What do you call that then? Well, the people who call Israel's defensive war a genocide probably call this resistance because, yeah, that's how they refer to yeah, to what the Palestinians do. But bringing it back to uh, the topic, you know, all of these different elements will struggle to continue, uh, like you said, without the sanction of the good, but also if their main funders are eliminated, and that is Iran. So again, this action against Iran, especially if it leads to the fall of the regime, uh, will have this ripple effect. And things that Israel has done already during this war has achieved that. Like again, they did in Gaza. they didn't do things the way I would like to. I would have liked them done, but they did a lot. And they did a lot of damage to Hamas. What they did in Lebanon was very impressive. Again, they made sure Hezbollah is still around, and we don't know, by the way, what part of the Iranian response is coming from Lebanon, but Hezbollah is still around enough that something will come from there. Um, and yeah, the world will change for the better if this attack happens and happens in as close to the right way, the way it should happen as possible. Yeah.
Definitely. I'm I really don't know. Like I'm trying to think about whether will it happen or not in the near future. And we could wake up on Sunday and there will be news about a deal done, a done deal. Like they've made agreements and everything's off and there's a deal and now Iran can enrich a little and in practice, they can keep funding terror and they can keep fund Hezbollah and people in Iraq and terror around the war and attacks in Europe and even maybe in the States, who knows? So I think it's just crazy. Like it's a possibility.
Yeah, that's definitely a fear of mine is that President Trump, especially, will want a deal and will craft some type of a deal that leads to exactly what was just mentioned of Iran's the regime being inculcated and the potential to enrich uranium and to develop weapons preserved. So that if that's the deal, then it's an immense loss for the West. If Israel has some type of a Hezbollah pager operation up its sleeve in Iran, whereas somehow they smuggled in these little explosives into chewing gum and they're in all the somehow they have a plan in place. Boy, we'd love to see that. Now would be a great time to set that out and really send a message to the Iranian people that they are doomed under this leadership. They need better leadership. They need better ideas, and eliminating the West and Israel cannot be one of them.
Um, yeah, there was one type of report that I've seen a lot in recent months with the negotiation going on, and Trump kind of saying, okay, if the negotiation doesn't go well, then we're gonna bomb them. And the fact that the negotiation is going on kind of made people wonder if Netanyahu might actually attack against Trump's wishes, which A, I don't know to what extent it's advisable. B, Netanyahu seems like the last person to do something like that. Do you think there's any chance, yeah, we'll wake up, as you said, on Sunday and there's a deal, and then we wake up on Monday and Israel did it anyway?
No, I don't think there's anything to add. Like I think you're right.
No, no, go ahead.
All right, so I think there has been a lot of trends in Israel in the past decade, and one of them was willingly become independent in the United States. And I don't want to give out any information that might aid our enemies, but I would say that I think it's quite known that Israel is pretty much reliant on the United States, at least in the international level. But also in other regards. And I think that's a shame. I think that's bad both for Israel and the United States' interest. I think both states should be willingly allowing each state to be independent. And I think the United States trying to softly control other states with fundings is against the United States' Israel interest. And I think Israel has an interest to have its own self-sustainable power, political power, military power, economic power, etc., etc., etc. And I think the fact that Israel has such a relationship of dependence with the United States will make it less likely that Israel will strike Iran against the United States' wishes, and that's without addressing Bibi's personality and traits and willingness. And Israel has done things against the United States wishes, but only when it was cornered. And examples are Netanyahu and Biden's relationship, which went pretty much downhill. Biden has basically told, like, or the administration, I don't think Biden said anything, but the administration basically told Israel, listen, like, if you will go to Rafah or do ABC, it'll be a weapon embargo. And we went to Rafah anyway, and there was a weapon embargo on Israel from the Biden administration. So there has been time when we had our different opinions and actions. Yet, I think in such a dramatic thing as launching an attack in Iran, I think it's very unlikely that Israel would do it without a green light from the state. I don't see it as a likely scenario. It is possible, but I don't see it likely.
Yeah, and that is a very good point. I mean, Israel does need to start moving towards being independent. If it didn't learn its lesson from the previous clearly unfriendly regime, it should learn it from the supposedly friendly one in the White House now, which embraced, Netanyahu, Trump embraced Netanyahu the first visit, kind of embarrassed him in the photo op in the second visit, is negotiating with Iran, is talking about how Erdogan is like best buddies, and so yeah, it's very very bad for Israel. I completely agree. I agree it's bad for America as well, but it's Israel should care about Israel, and if it hasn't learned the lesson of not being able to fully execute the war because Biden won't let them, then yeah, learn it now and learn it quickly. And if you think Trump will be on your side for the next 3.5 years, which, I hope so, but I wouldn't count on it, don't assume that the next president, AOC or whoever it is, will do the same. Jonathan.
And I'll just two reading recommendations for people who say these are generation or multi-century wars that can never be won. Nothing Less Than Victory by objectivist John David Lewis, who's deceased, and also Winning the Unwinnable War, which is a collection of essays by Alain Journo, both which spell out, I think, in great detail on how true peace could be achieved globally and in the Middle East.
Yeah, and since we are wrapping up, yeah, is there any other book upcoming or anywhere else where people can get those ideas, but specifically to this war?
So yeah, I'm currently in a movement called Victory Now. We're working on a book called Victory Now, and our website is www.victory.now. So very easy to remember. You're free to go into the website. You can sign up for our waiting list and you can sign up for our Substack there, and you can also donate to us. I think it's a very important cause, and we're trying to really promote a moral change in the culture, in Western culture and in Israeli culture. So we'd be brave enough to defend ourselves. As I mentioned before about the attack in Iran, whether we can take down the regime or not, it depends on the views that people hold.
Yeah, victory.now is easy to remember, but if you can't remember it, there is a link in the description. Thank you, Bronx Guy Gun Hill Road, for the super chat. Jonathan, where can people find you?
They should check out my book, Can You Really Love a Dog? Leonard Peikoff wrote it. He is Ayn Rand's intellectual heir, and it's all about our philosophical understanding of our pets. Can You Really Love a Dog at Amazon?
I have yet to write a book, but I do write tweets. Razi Ginsburg on Twitter. Yeah, you can go there just to read the replies I get. They are sometimes entertaining, sometimes scary, but as I always say, there's reason to fear, but there's no reason to fear the people who actually make those death threats behind a fake name from their mom's basement. So yeah, we're gonna keep doing this. Hopefully, one of these coming days, we're gonna have an unscheduled episode in a different time of day because Israel has finally done what it should have done a long time ago. When that happens, we will be here. Thank you, Eyal. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We're back here tomorrow with a daily objective and the reality show.